What's up, everybody, and welcome to another edition of AGR's Pop Culture Reviews. December 16th is come and gone, and unless you've been hiding under a rock, you'll know what little film dominated the box office this weekend. So, did this film resonate with audiences, or was it a misstep just like those god-awful prequels? Let's take a closer look at Star Wars Rogue One. So Star Wars Rogue One is really an interesting film, especially when you consider that it's now part of the canon of the original trilogies. Essentially what this is a little snippet of what happens before A New Hope and how the rebellion originally got the plans for the first Death Star, and it's gotta tell you, it's pretty freaking interesting. I'm not exactly sure if it was intentional or not, or maybe the director was just trying to find his own identity for this film, but it certainly doesn't start off like a typical Star Wars film. Now, for many fanboys, or even just casual fans alike who remember the nostalgia of the original films, that might be a little off-putting, and I have to admit, it was a little jarring at first for me, but little by little as I got comfortable with the film, it did start to remind me of the Star Wars movie, so it was not such a big deal, but it is noticeable at first. I also have to admit that the first act of this film was a little bit messy and unfocused. Much of the reason was because we kept jumping from planet to planet, and I don't know, it made it a little bit jarring. Some of the pacing was off in that first act. I can certainly understand the purpose of this, obviously to show how many systems had been occupied by the Empire, but still, because of the fact that we didn't spend so much time on these planets, we didn't really get invested. It was a neat idea, but I think it was just poorly executed. Thankfully, all the characters in this movie are pretty great, though I did question why certain characters were in the film, mostly like Forrest Whitaker, Saw Gerrera. Why was he even in the film? Much like Captain Phasma, he looked really cool but was wasted as a character. They alluded to him being a really badass in the film, even too badass at times for the rebellion, but you never really see that, and it was a total waste. Jyn Erso, played by Felicity Jones, was a serviceable character, but I don't know, for some reason she just didn't have too much screen presence. Now don't get me wrong, I loved her as a character, but she simply lacked some of the charm and wit as, say, a character like Rey in The Force Awakens, and that was a real shame. I guess I just expected a more gradual progression of this person, especially since we initially meet her, she is kind of jaded and cynical. Instead, in many ways, we get this kind of awkward cheerleader, which is not to say that she wasn't inspirational in the film. However, her character was just a little bit inconsistent. I mean, there's no real transition or development here. One minute she's basically all piss and vinegar, not wanting to get involved with the rebellion, and the next minute she's leading this small assault on a massive Imperial installation, and basically becomes a freedom fighter. It was just a little weird. Captain Cassian, played by Diego Luna, was an interesting character and definitely one of the most morally ambiguous in the film. Now, I think it was very important, or it is a very important theme in this film, about whether or not the ends justify the means, and the sacrifices that the rebels have to make to keep their rebellion alive. The notion that one man's revolutionary hero is another man's terrorist, and that's a fascinating aspect for the Star Wars universe. Donnie Yen plays Chirrut Îmwe, and he is a total badass in the film. What I really liked about this character was that he was a true believer in the Force, not necessarily based on the fact that he can wield it, but more based on the faith and hope that it gives him. His character was kind of a religious element that was truly fascinating. That is, of course, when he wasn't kicking the piss out of every stormtrooper. Though I did think that both, as a metaphor, were taking a bit too much. Donnie Yen's character is literally the embodiment of blind devotion to the Jedi way. Baze Malbus, of course, represents the divide between the old way and the new. He takes us back to that Han Solo's philosophy that it's better to have a blaster than some hokey religion. I guess they figured that American audiences were too stupid to get it, so they really drilled it. Regardless of whatever the fact, even though it was a little bit over the top, they're still total badasses in the film. Ironically, one of the truly charming and witty characters was the new droid, K2SO. I love this character, mostly because he was kind of a jerk. He was very sarcastic. Somebody must have reprogrammed him to be a real smartass. It's funny because he was the character that exhibited the most human characteristics, and I absolutely loved him. Rounding out this cast was Riz Ahmed, who played Bloody Rook. Now, one of the reasons that I really like this character is that he brought a real sense of humanity and authenticity to this film. What I liked about it was that he really exemplifies how anybody can find themselves in these extraordinary situations and end up making an incredible difference. He also gave the film a sense of urgency and emotional weight. His brevity was a much welcome aspect of the overall story, and he was a fantastic character. I almost forgot. Actually, there is one more character that was really amazing. He was actually perfect in this role. Ben Mendelsohn plays Orson Krennic, an ambitious, administrative, callous asshole, and his performance was amazing. He was never too over the top, only until the situation called for it, and for me, that's truly being in touch with the character that you're trying to portray. Also, his motivations were not only believable, but it's actually what would happen to a person in this position, and what he would go through to get where he needs to go to. It was freaking awesome. The second and third act of this film is where it really begins to pick up, and you start to feel like it's a Star Wars film. The battles in this film, dear God, when shit starts going down in this film, I mean, it was very impressive. Man, was it freaking awesome. However, there are a few bumps in the road. You know, obviously this is not a perfect film, and some of the ideas that they went with really stuck out, and they were really strange. Some things I found in the film to be needlessly complicated, just for the sake of creating drama in the film, an obstacle that needs to be overcome, and I kept saying to myself, how the hell is that even practical? I also have to say something about the CGI of two characters in this film. Now, I'm not going to spoil it, but I will say, my God, did they look creepy as hell. I imagine you can get away with it in the movie theater because, you know, it's not Ultra HD or anything like that, but can you imagine when this comes to Blu-ray and 4K or something like that? It is gonna look freaking horrible. Trust me, guys. You'll know it when you see it. I mean, I understand why they had to do this for obvious reasons, but my God, every time I saw them in the film, it was jarring as shit. Mostly because the rest of the film looks so photorealistic, so organic and natural. Not this. And finally, there's one aspect of the film, it's toward the end of the film, that was really rushed and, to be honest with you, seemed really contrived. I see what they were trying to do. They were trying to tie in Rogue One to A New Hope. Now, I'm not gonna lie, when I first saw it, I was smiling from ear to ear because it brought me back to my childhood, basically. But again, the CGI was so freaking horrible that it took me out of the experience, not to mention the line that was delivered was abysmal in my opinion, and so out of character. Okay, now that I got those gripes out of the way, we can talk about some of the rest of the film, and this is really not a spoiler, guys, because you saw it in the trailers, but the scene with Darth Vader are nothing short of fucking phenomenal. It's worth the price of admission just to see those scenes, and we finally get to see why Darth Vader is such a menacing force. My God, they were amazing. Also, what I really loved about this film is that it, very brutally I might add, shows us the cost that was paid by the rebellion for confiscating the plans for the original Death Star, and it was one of the most impactful and profound aspects of the movie. For me, this aspect of the film really brought me back to my childhood, and really brought me back to one of the reasons that I loved Mon Mothma to begin with, when she delivered that very chilling message about how many people had to die in order for the rebellion to get those original plans. And finally, the answers that we've been waiting for, they do explain the long debated question as to why the hell the Death Star was so vulnerable in The New Hope, and you know what? It actually made a lot of logical sense. I thought that aspect of the film was pretty good. Overall though, Rogue One is a standalone Star Wars film, and really succeeds where the prequels failed miserably. What made the film really resonate for me was the overall story of the capture of the plans of the Death Star, and how it went down. I'm still thinking about it now, and I'm having a much greater appreciation for the film and all its characters. Sure, there are a few bumps and some questionable characterizations, some creepy CGI, and some needlessly complicated plot devices, but nothing that really ruins a pretty fantastic movie. Alright guys, so that's my official review on the film Star Wars Rogue One. As always, I thank you for tuning in, and I'll see you on the next AGR's Pop Culture Reviews, and until the next film, may the Force be with you.